Hey, kitty. Creatives, community, kind folks out there. Hello there. This is RPG with DBJ. I am your host, and we are going to talk about third pillar of gaming in relation to the Fae, fairies, the Fae Wild, sprites, pixies, all that kind of thing, because that's been our theme all week. And it seems that just as I'm going live, I have myself a co-host. Hey, Sophie. Yeah, sorry about that. Guys, thank you for joining me. I see a couple of people already available, ready for me to dive in and bore the hell out of you. No, okay. Third pillar Thursdays. Why? Because the third pillar of gaming is exploration, the environment, with the first two pillars being combat and social interaction. So what can we do with the Fae and the Feywild, which I believe is part of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and came about I believe 3rd edition or 3.x at some point. The third talking about the Feywild, the specific extra dimensional region where Fey creatures live. But even if you don't have that in your game, there's always been the idea that fairies and Fey creatures have always lived in this half world, a place hidden away from society, whether it's a hollow in a tree or a distance away from society that has been unexplored and seems dangerous and mysterious. So Rickard, good morning there. Hello. Well, good morning for me. I believe it's not necessarily morning for yourself, but thank you very much. And I'm glad you could join me. I know savings time, daylight savings, or more specifically, daylight saving time, which is weird. It hasn't happened for you till the end of the month, but yeah, thank you for joining me anyway. So I often, if you guys know me, you know that I often talk about using that third pillar of gaming, that exploration part of it, and the Fey creatures are the excellent way of like really going wild with it, like not even holding back. I think the only thing more wild than the Fey Wild for you to really ramp up the tension and the conflict and the exploration part of your gaming would probably be some chaotic realm like the Abyss, or a place that's complete chaos or something. Dead Man the Storyteller says many games have a Feywild. Exalted has one. Are you sure it's called the Feywild? I could have sworn it was trademarked, at least specifically that title. But those regions in general exist everywhere, like in many role-playing games. If it's fantasy, it does exist. Rickard says, working from home today, so daylight savings isn't an issue today. Good. Cool. But anyway, the point being is that these creatures tend to be capricious and flighty, and they have these really strange motivations, and they tend to come from places where it is accepted that the laws of physics and time and all that kind of business doesn't operate normally. So you can really play with the changing of time and space in a Fey location. So getting very general, time can pass at a different period. So for example, that you could have an area in the dark woods where the players go there for 3 years, and when they come back out, it's only been a day. Or you could have an area where they go in for 5 minutes and 3 years have passed, right? It's the Rumpelstiltskin, the falling asleep and taking a nap, and you wake up and your beard's 3 feet long, and you realize that 30 years have passed and you've lost connections with your family and friends and things. So very easily for time to have to pass by at an odd rate. Also, space is another thing for you to mess with. So, for example, walking into the woods could very easily mean that you step to another plane of existence, or that you've stepped into an extra dimensional like pocket, whether you step behind a tree and all of a sudden you're in this great fantastical world of fairies and kingdoms. And then when you step back behind that same tree, you're back where you started from. So little pocket dimensions are possible, maybe even multiple ones where there's a cluster of like satyrs and sprites and fairies and gremlins or whatever the hell you want to call them. Goblins and things could be thrown in there. Ogres could be thrown in there as or any other kind of creatures you want to throw in as fey creatures, and they could all have their little hovels, their own little homes, and in and around this area. And of course, we have to make sure that woodlands are not necessarily the only place fey creatures can live. They have different names, but you can have aquatic ones that live in the deep sea, or ones that live on rivers, in swamps, jungles, Arctic regions, mountains, all those kind of things. So don't forget about that. And lastly, there are lots of fey creatures that have been known to live in and around villages as well. The idea of little lawn gnomes cleaning people's houses, the elf on the shelf, the fey creatures that live under the bed. So it could be that, hey guys, let's the adventuring group slides under the bed of a little kid that's scared at night. Could lead you to Monsters Inc. 1,000 years or 2,000 years before they've gotten their modern technology, right? Brownies, thank you, Dead Man. Brownies are another one. And again, I mentioned before that your reskin, reuse, rename ability should be real paramount in this. Yes, there are games that have a number of stat blocks for you to use, but along with using those stat blocks and renaming them yourself, or making them look different or appear different, changing their outlook on life, i.e. changing their alignment, changing those things, you can also reskin a bunch of other creatures, sphinxes, naga, rakshasa, doppelgangers, more of the goblinoids. Goblins have been, and elves have always been in folklore related to fairy creatures. It's only in our role-playing experience they've been separated out, but you could absolutely throw in drow and tieflings. I've in my game world, I've reskinned tieflings as being related to satyrs and fey creatures, as opposed to having an infernal background. So you could do that as well. And then let's start going into the third pillar. Let's go into some of the more let's get a little closer, because I did very general things. We got time and space. So let's start talking about the immediate environment around fey creatures that you can really play with. One thing is, there seems to be an overriding idea that people are confused and distracted and unable to quite not recognize, but to comprehend the barrier between the home of the Fae and reality, right? It's a place where you go, where you fall asleep and you have take a small cat nap, and you stumble into an area, or maybe you've hit your head and you feel like you've had a concussion, and you as the lone adventurer fall into this place, or maybe you've been ensorcelled by a very beautiful fey creature, or you've drunk some fey wine and your head becomes dizzy or something. Well, you can duplicate this in any game you want, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or any other game, by having like ability checks or saving throws or skill checks that involve navigation or affect the mind, whether it's using your intelligence. Dead Man brings up Alice in Wonderland. There could be strange ways to get there. Let's take Alice in Wonderland, where she eats the biscuits, the little cupcakes that make her shrink to enter into a fantasy realm, or to grow into a fantasy realm, or maybe to eat something to pass through the stones in a mountainous valley or something, right? You could, the entrance and exit to some of these places could be a thing, as well as maybe walking down a hallway or passing through an area where each step you take feels like you're shrinking an inch more every time you take a step. Or it could be a vast maze. Maybe someone has a uh, a rich noble has a hedge maze in their backyard, right? It's like many acres, or however you measure a giant maze that's cut in pristine hedges and bushes in the rich noble's backyard, and mentions offhandedly to you as you go to the expensive dinner that if you're able to complete the maze, it'll take you to a wondrous land. But I suggest that you take your weapons and items with you. And the players are like, "Oh, okay, I guess after having a great dinner, I guess we can go out there." And so you've had some wine and you have some meal, you go out through the maze. And then after figuring your way through the maze, you end up in another world. And when you look behind you, you just see the entrance of the maze. And maybe like in a foggy area or in shadow, you can see the rich noble's mansion that you've just left or something. Or maybe it just disappears in the fog itself. So also with disorientation, here's another way we can challenge your players without breaking the rules, but actually challenge them in different ways. And in this method is where you should really foreshadow or point blank, just talk to your players about what you plan on having in your game. So instead of having like dex saves to dodge out of the way of like a pit trap, or strength saves to, bend bars, lift gates or something, start using other skills and or stats to overcome certain challenges. So for example, I mentioned in earlier in the week that maybe you enter into an area where your great fears are brought to life. For example, like some people have a fear of heights or falling. Some people have a fear of spiders or snakes. Even public speaking is a fear, right? So maybe the save is an intelligence save to avoid falling into a pit trap, which makes you, like literally standing on the edge of infinity, right? If you use your intelligence or your wisdom, maybe you can ignore the quote unquote illusions, or rather shifts in reality, to navigate your way through maybe literally an open field, right? If you fall for it, all of a sudden you're walk, boom, and then your feet are on the edge of the precipice of a long cliff, and you fall over in the cliff, whereas your other player characters who may not have that specific fear are keep on walking, and they're like, what happened to you? Like, where'd he go? It could also be, like I mentioned before, about having certain adversaries. It could be if your fears are brought about, that if you have a fear of spiders, you could be attacked by a swarm of spiders or giant spiders, but your other PCs just see you swinging in midair and not hitting it, which could allow certain players to it could be complicated. Don't get me wrong. Doing something like adjudicating something like that could be complicated by having, like, let's say there's 3 players and you have 3 different interactions, and it's difficult for each of them to help the other. That could be a little complicated, but you could, if you are willing to dive into it, it would allow them to shine. So a certain player character, your barbarian character, that really wants to hack and slash things, might be fighting off giant snakes because he really hates snakes, right? So he's fighting off giant snakes, where the wizard maybe doesn't like spiders because he's like, oh, I just don't want my wizard's tower to be dirty, and I keep having to get rid of these spider cobwebs in the corners of my wizard's tower. And then all of a sudden he's fought by giant spiders, and he's just rolling his eyes like, oh, I knew they'd come back at me. And so he gets to blast the giant spiders. And then maybe the paladin is just like, I don't like to jump across rooftops, I don't like to climb cliffs, I just like to put my feet on the ground. At the most, I like to get on my horse or other steed thereof. And all of a sudden he's pitted against the fact of, tripping and falling. And every time he climbs out of this pit and looks around and just sees a flat plane, 1, 2, 3 steps, and oh no, I'm falling again, or something like that. But that situation could be very different, especially if, now, how would a player really admit what their fear is? No, but you could also say, hey, I've got 5 options. One of these is a primal fear of yours, pick one. But we can go past fears and go towards other things as well. Charisma tends to be the dump stat, especially when you have players that are far more like We want to knock down the door, go through the dungeon, gather some magic items, and leave, right? Charisma tends to be the dump stat, but you can make charisma saves as well. Charisma saves in 5th edition aren't a big thing, and there's almost no attention drawn to it. But how could you? The idea of operating a charisma save could be done in this manner, right? In order for you to bypass a danger, it could be you talking your way out of it, charming your way, threatening your way, deceiving your way past it, or it affects you. So, for example, we often see in Fey realms where you have like giant trees with the faces of man on the trees, right? It looks like the knotted wood looks like 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Now, of course, you can make them just treants in 5th edition, living trees, living boulders. Boulders could be elemental creatures, or you could reskin them as clay golems or stone golems or something of that nature, or any other kind of things. In the frozen wasteland, there could be fey creatures that live out there as well, and it could be giant ice sculptures or what have you, which would be kind of cool though, shattering them and have them reform. Rickard mentions people who fell asleep for too long. Give me 2 seconds because I'm going to go into that as well. But you could pass through a Fey realm where the very land around you wants to harm you and attack you. And if you cajole it, threaten it, coax it, convince it, charm it, promise it, you could avoid being attacked as the living foliage tries to wrap around you and strangle you or grapple you, or the stone face in the side of the mountain, says, "You must not pass here. You are strangers." And you're like, wait, don't hurt me. I'm here to see the princess so-and-so, or, mountain, you don't know my power. Beware what happens to you if you were to strike me down, as small pebbles start falling and larger stones start to fall. And that could be a charisma save to get by, right? You can't dodge the I don't know, the tornado or the crashing waves or the frozen ice storm physically, but maybe using charisma you could do it. But Rickard brings up people who fell asleep too long. You could also have areas or regions in your world, to add some complications to it, where you have to make a save where you fall asleep, right? That could be using the sleep spell, and it could be a permanent effect in this part of the realm. It could be where it affects everyone that comes through it. It could be a whole person spell. Just falling asleep happens to be the result of it, but basically you stop and you fall asleep and no one can wake you up, almost like being ensorcelled, or it could be a condition of an attack. So you could have a trap, but instead of being harmed, you're paralyzed or petrified, i.e., falling asleep is the end result, but really you're paralyzed and or petrified, right? So being petrification and falling asleep could be you fall asleep, but you stop aging. You're not even affected by things. You have a golden sheen over your body with a smile on your face as you're just like, this feels so good. And everyone's just like, wake up, and your body's like stiff as a board or something. Rickard says, in reference to the trees with faces, the people who fell asleep for too long, exactly, which could be a condition, right? The PC that quote unquote falls asleep and turns into a tree with a face on it could be other adventurers that are quote unquote petrified. So the petrified tree, the petrification result might just be individuals, victims that have turned into trees to fill up the this realm, or it could be something else where anyone that gets killed in this Fey realm or drinks too much of the Fey wine or whatever the case may be turns into these trees. And of course, the result is, not necessarily trees, it doesn't have to be woodland, it could be faces in stone, or I don't know, their faces writ upon the mists around them. Also, Tesla Ranger brings up the Wizard of Oz poppy field. Exactly. If I'm gonna, sorry, I gotta plug something. I apologize, but sorry, not sorry. I uh, I brought this up in Plains and Grasslands as one of the cinematic environs, and in it there's you have chromatic fields. So there's like something that I like to delve into in terms of using the environment is creating situations where Rickard says, "It's your stream, mate. If you want to plug something, go right ahead." There's a context to it, right? So think of the Wizard of Oz poppy fields, right? And if you ever imagine like uh daisies or fields of flowers where you run your hands through them and there's always like a soft glow in the sunlight, and then the pollen lifts in the air as you rub your hands, and those of us who suffer from allergies start sneezing and coughing and hacking, and we're just like, what the hell, I need an antihistamine. Okay, maybe I diverted a little bit away from there, but let's assume that it feels good, and you see the pollen lifts into the air, and all of a sudden the pollen goes into your throat and you start to drown, or you catch on fire, or it touches your skin and it starts to burn or something like that. So one of the things I like to play with are using threats that the player characters can control themselves. In other words, me as the game master, I set up the situation. The player characters can do whatever the hell they want to, whether that means increasing or decreasing the tension. For example, with the poppy field, if you perform the dash action, this is 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, if you run through the poppy fields, the pollen will lift into the air and will have whatever the chromatic effect is, whether it's like golden poppies or purple or brown or silver or what have you. You can do the same thing, right? Without, I mean, I would love it if you guys purchase this, but you don't have to purchase it. You can do it on your own. You could make yourself a little like a list of like 4 to 10 different spell effects that happen if someone disrupts the pollen in the area. So a simple field of like sunflowers and daisies or something like that. Sorry, I had a Pop-Tart. That's my napkin. But a simple field of flowers and daisies and things could be extremely hazardous, but based on certain colors, like the color blue is a sleep spell, and the color yellow is, I don't know, radiant energy or something, and the color red could be fire, and the color green could be acid. The color purple could be poison or charm or something like that, right? Whatever the case may be, and the PCs are like, okay, the daisy lions are coming after us. Google lions and daisies, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, the daisy lions are going after us with their green moss fur and their fronds around their necks or something. So we run through the fields, we're going to make it more dangerous. But if we walk slowly, we're not going to disrupt it. But that means it's going to take us longer to get to the other side of the field. So, but yes, you can play with that anywhere in your setting, right? Thick fog is a common trope of sorts in Fey realms, where you're unable to see through the fog and the mist and such. So that could severely limit or reduce sight lines. And I've mentioned this before. We tend to forget that if you're using like psionic abilities or magic or ranged weapons, hey, if your sight line is reduced to 20 feet or 10 meters or whatever the case may be, whatever your measurement is, or whatever measurement you want to include, like if it's pea soup thick and you could barely see your hand in front of your face, and you've got like a 1 meter, 5 foot range, and that's it. Anything beyond that you can't see. There are many special abilities and even ranged attacks that, hey, if you can't see it, it's considered invisible. If you can't see it, you can't target them. So that cleric that wants to heal their party, or that bard that wants to buff their group, you can't target them, right? And again, it's playing with the environment to make things a challenge. Does a player use maybe a player really wants to use their fireball, but instead reconsiders it because they want to use a gust of wind to blow the fog away, right? It's giving players those choices and challenging them on those things. Also, Fey creatures don't necessarily have to be limited to a two-dimensional plane. You can have areas where they live in the clouds, having floating castles. We love our floating. I love a floating castle or floating landmass. Whether they're connected by chains or there's like rope bridges connecting all these floating masses, or there's one giant castle on a chunk of earth, that looks like it just lifted out of the ground or something. You can always do things like that. Storm giants living in the skies with cloud elementals and winged spirits and sprites and fairies floating around, flying around the castle. So you could definitely have hazards where, hey, listen, it's cool to be in the castle, but on the edge, we might fall to our deaths, and we better be careful about that. Or having to climb up to some place like that where it's held in place by giant-sized chains placed there by titans, and the players have to climb up into that region, and maybe they are besieged by some sort of flying creatures like harpies. And those harpies, instead of being ugly, green, nasty things, you could reskin harpies as having beautiful elven faces and golden and ivory wings, but they still have the same abilities, right? So yes, you could mess with heights. They could live in a canopy of trees. They could literally live on the side of a sheer cliff, and so their entire society could be vertical instead of horizontal. Living in the Arctic, there could be strong winds and blizzards and storms and such. So maybe the blizzard storms or a reskinned ice storm spell or what have you cover tracks. So it could be very hard to track something. It could be very difficult to see things at a distance. It could be, you could add quote unquote disadvantage on ranged attacks because it blows arrows out of the way, or that acid spray or acid arrow spell that you want to cast gets snatched away by the wind or something, or maybe just hit at disadvantage. You could apply resistance to many things. Underwater, when the PCs are drawn underwater by a siren that charms one of the PCs, and the other ones jump in the water after them as they're being guided down into an underwater realm. So of course, casting those fiery spells would probably have reduced, i.e. Half effect or half duration as well, or be completely and maybe even have the range, duration, and effect, die rolls or damage, or it could be ineffective at all. Although if you want to go more scientific, you could have electrical abilities have like area effects or something, or they could be additionally more potent, or your shocking grasp spell now can affect, is like becomes an aura around you. But anyway, you can start using the environment there as well in terms of needing to swim and make athletics checks and drowning rules and all those kind of things. So you could really challenge your players instead of just having them stand on a green screen and fight the PCs. I've brought up green screening before, where you could click a button and change the background, but it never really has an effect on what's going on in the background. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're fighting the ogre in the woods, in the Arctic, in the desert, but you just click the green screen. It doesn't matter where they're at, right? So, for example, in a desert, you could apply levels of having them to make saves to apply levels of exhaustion if they don't rest. And the Fey creatures could control or operate or phase in and out of existence an oasis for the players to get to. And having a conflict out in the desert realms, the Fey creatures might be trying to push the PCs into passing out from the heat and the heat waves and such, and becoming dehydrated. And even the player character that has good berry and create water and stuff, trying to help the PCs, maybe that's the very thing that draws to them some of these Feyland defenders to this realm. So giant scorpions might be a very common thing. Sidewinder snakes, trapdoor spiders, vultures, other scavenger creatures might be very common. Living cactuses could be a very common thing as well. Quicksand, tar pits, sand dunes that have very extremely high dips and valleys, right? Ridges and valleys where that could be challenges, as well as fighting or combating against fey creatures that also can shape change and charm you and all that kind of stuff. So that could be a thing where they use the environment against you because, of course, they want to live forever, as well as the fact that we don't want to ignore the fact that fey creatures, and we talked about this before, that fey creatures are very social in terms of carousing and charming and the desires that they want. Let's not forget that to them, the environment they live in might not bother them, living in, Arctic realms where just being outside for a few seconds can give you frostbite. It might not be a big thing. A dead man storyteller brings up the cactar. Yeah. I hope that's a cactus centaur, which believe you me, you wouldn't want to ride on that thing. I think you could ride on it once, and after that, the comical image of the PCs trying to pull out all the thorny things that stuck into your rear end and your personables. Although if you kill it, I suppose you could harvest out of it quite a lot of nourishment and a lot of fluid. So although it was just alive, I mean, I don't know, but again, reskinning some of those plant creatures would be great. Rickard says, great, now I need to add a cactar style monster to my world. I wonder what the rear end looks like. The rear end and personables look like on anything that rides on a cactar. Everyone's just pointing and laughing and giggling. They're like, what's wrong? What are you pointing at? And they're like, you've got things stuck in your woohoo, your ha-ha, your wazoo. Oh man. Anyway, so third pillar gaming, right? The exploration part of it. Now here is another way, especially if you want to have enemies you want to include enemies that are far more powerful than your PCs can deal with. Fey dragons, fey giants, the reskinned Rakshasa doppelgangers, Naga and Sphinxes that you've added to your game, and your players are only like first to third level or something, right? Dead Man the Storyteller says animated cactus treant creature from Final Fantasy. I have not seen it. I did not know that it was a thing. I'm crestfallen. I'm flabbergasted. I did not know that was a thing. I'm going to look it up. I'm sorry. I tend not to be chop-headed, but I'm going to look it up. So let's go ahead and go here. I'm going to cut and paste what you just said and see if this comes up. And images. Oh, okay. I see it. Yeah. It looks like, of course, a bunch of other pictures come up. Final Fantasy, Sabotender, Cacti, humanoid cactus. Some of them are some silly ass looking creatures too. Come on now, cactus doesn't look that well. I guess it does look silly. I'm not that it's not dangerous, but yeah, it does look silly. Sorry, little distracted there. Yeah, Google it. Yep, I sure did. So now some of the other things when it comes to exploration is to incentivize your PCs to explore, is to have something for them to find, right? If you're going to bother looking around, you might as well have them stumble across things. Now, of course, in a dungeon, you have secret doors and concealed doors, even though concealed doors are that's like a first edition, second edition kind of thing. The difference between a secret door and a concealed door. Rickard says, I just realized how terrifying they must be. You're in a desert and you see a cactus and it's either a source of water or 1,000 needles in your face. I'm thinking both, right? But you're absolutely right. This thing's trying to hunt you down, has the ability to survive in the desert, and all of a sudden it shoots needles in your face or tries to grapple you, and you're just like, no. Oh man. But could you imagine some critical hits or fumbles where you get blinded by it, or your limbs are paralyzed, or something like that. I mean, that'd be pretty. Honestly, you could get pretty nasty with it. Where if it rolls a 15 or higher, you got to make a save, or you're blinded, or you got to make a save, or your hand goes numb, and you drop your spell components, or your offhand weapon, or your sword, or something. Dante says, "I like the new Cactus Centaur version better, but I'd still give it the 1,000 needles attack." Yeah, yeah. Did that cactus just move? Yeah, you're in a camp and all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night and you're surrounded by cactuses. And you're just like, I guess we did pick a safe area, I suppose. Should be able to keep out predators. Yeah, let's make camp inside of that circle of cacti. And they wake up. Oh man. But the you get attacked while you're taking a dump in the woods kind of thing would really be an a-hole move by a DM or a GM. But hey, whatever. The paladin's got to come out of his 24 armor class at some point, right? Puts down the hinge, gets ready to squat, and all of a sudden the cactus comes by and gives him a little pat on the bum bum. Boop, boop. I heal myself, okay, and your butt keeps hurting. I heal myself again. Yeah, it's only temporary. You got to pull the needles out. Sorry. So, but the point being is that when we explore, sometimes we find things that help us out, whether it's killing a cactar and knowing that there's nourishment in it. It could be, if you want to insert creatures that are powerful, maybe there are things. Ricker says, "Lay on hands just got a new meaning." Stay still. I'm not done yet. Oh man. Oh, this just went down the wrong path, I think. Everybody hold the paladin down. I just wanted to take a crap. I needed to pinch a loaf, man. I needed to drop a bomb, and I got hit on a bum bum. Oh man, yeah. Sorry, had to. Yeah, absolutely. That's so funny. So anyway, when we're out discovering things, right? You can give little clues, i.e., they could be magic items, they could be hints for spells, they could be little limitations that fey creatures have to placate them. So maybe the killing the cactar to get the fluid out of them, and that makes a powerful drink, might be very good for like the desert. I don't know. The desert satyrs have always been looking for it and offering it to them. I don't know. Gives you allows you to bypass their region or something like that. Or the idea of finding the salt flats out in the desert might be a place, because the salt flats are salted, that the magic of the fey creatures is limited. So if you bring the doppelgangers or the shape changers or the other fey creatures onto that realm, their magic is diminished or even canceled out. They cannot charm you when you're standing on the salt flats, and you're just like, didn't I hear something about sprinkling salt around the house, or making a magical pentagram or something with salt? Man, we're on the salt flats. They can never do anything to us, right? So that could be a way for you to reward your players situationally to get them out of tight situations, especially if you really want to introduced far more powerful creatures. And of course, there's always social interaction, right? We don't have to fight the Sphinx, but we can also talk to it, as well as, the common idea of the Sphinx and the riddle. There could be the interaction with the fey creatures, could be the solving of riddles, and each riddle that the player character solves confounds the fey creatures, because they're like, oh, we didn't think you'd ever figure it out. It's like their own code of conduct, right? Here's the riddle. If you figure the riddle, it cancels out one or more of our special powers, but we still have to give you the riddle anyway, because that's just how we are, because that's the kind of fey creatures we are. So that could be a thing, as well as like, we always hear the fey creatures and them carousing, right? Maybe we're sticking in the desert here, so maybe they have these parties around these oases, and and such, and offering food and drink. And of course, player characters are like, I'm not drinking that. No, I'm not, but maybe the powerful fey creatures are like, listen, if you want to pass by, you want to survive in this land, you're going to have to drink and eat with us, which could also have, debilitating effects or chaotic effects or something like that. Rickard Johansson says, playing a game that requires some random skills that is not normally puzzle skills. Exactly. And here's another thing I like to bring up a lot. And I hear this as a complaint, not just in Dungeons and Dragons, but a lot of games where dump stats or useless skills. Well, the only reason those skills or those stats are useless is because we don't interact with them. So, or in other words, when a player makes a character and writes down animal handling, that means they're telling you they want to handle animals, right? If a player character puts a bunch of points in their medicine skill, that means they want to that means they want to practice medicine. They want to be a physician, even if they are a shaman or a herbalist or an apothecary or an alchemist, right? Someone makes up an alchemist, they want to play with alchemical formulas which means basically the skills they pick. If someone wants to be a theoretical physicist, that means they want to theorize with physics. So give them some physics to theorize, right? Rickard says, if we never roll for persuasion, why would any player put points into it? Exactly. And exactly. Have challenging the players in the skills they pick, even if it's their... Let's say somebody makes up a diplomancer. A diplomancer is a character where they dumped all their points into their social skills. If they go into the dungeon, and dungeon air quotes, because the dungeon could be the wilderness, the dungeon could be underwater, the dungeon could be exploring the desert or the Arctic realm or something, give them something to talk to. Give them a way to charm their way out of a situation. And then on the other opposite end of that spectrum, challenge the barbarian with his social skills, challenge the diplomancer with having to use athletics. And then therefore each person not only spreads the spotlight, but maybe the barbarian now has to make the choice. Hey, I'm the damage dealer, or do I stop and help my ally who isn't a very athletic individual to get across these natural crevices, right? Does my character become selfish, which could be a character flaw, right? I'm going to go to attack the creatures, and everyone else is like, no. You need to help my dwarf, get across this chasm. Could you use your help action to help my dwarf get across this chasm? And it's like, what do I do? What do I do? Putting those choices in player hands is what you really should do. So, for example, Rickard brings up the fact of, playing a game that requires some random skills is not normally that are not normally puzzle skills. Using medicine, using animal handling. What are some other useless skills? Using carpentry, using medicine skill, using any number of so-called useless skills may be the way, especially in a fey realm, for people to bypass something, right? For example, there's the trope of the angry beast that has a thorn in its foot, and the small innocent individual that confronts the creature pulls the thorn out of the foot of the creature. Now, I believe that's one of the stories of David and the Lion or something, and it's also been it's been modified in terms of fairy tales and things of that nature, right? It's the we're being attacked by a powerful monster. Hey, I'm the damage dealer. I'm going to kill it. And the other person's like, well, is there something wrong? If I use my medicine skill, could I pull the tooth out of the creature so he doesn't feel that harm in his mouth? They're like, yeah, you could be a dentist. Yeah, why not? So you convince the creature to stay still. You pull the rotted tooth out of the Sphinx's mouth. And he's like, wow, that's great. Okay, I'm going to give you a riddle. And if you pass the riddle, you can pass by. Thanks for helping me out. This feels so much better, right? I mean, I know I'm describing it as something silly, but it could be something that you could add to the game where maybe there's a fey realm, and in this realm, the fey creatures are suffering from some kind of very arcane disease, and a player just using cure disease won't work, right? It's a disease that is transforming the fey creatures into great beasts, like displacer beasts and owlbears or something like that, right? And it's almost like a lycanthropic disease that's transforming them. they don't know if they should trust humanity. So the diplomancer comes up and says, "Hey, I think we have a cure for this." And the cleric is like, well, my normal spells won't be able to heal it, but maybe I can find some kind of herb or something. So then we go with the alchemist character who finds a way to cure this disease, right? Here we have a number of characters getting involved to cure something. Rickard says, as someone playing an extreme diplomancer in a party with an armored brute, it is also important to know when to challenge what, and knowing and trusting the DM to give everyone a time to shine. As well as, I'm going to add further to that, PCs should understand that the spotlight shifts. And so the big armored brute should understand that this is a situation that is not necessarily geared towards them, that it is literally, I bring up the idea of lone wolf and cub. If you're not aware, and this has been done many times, there's a story about lone wolf and cub. Lone wolf is the atypical great samurai swordsman who only has one skill, to be the best swordsman in the land, and has basically no other skills, right? No other survival skills, no parenting skills, no cooking skills, no whatever, and has a choice after seeing all of his people dead except for one small child. Do I kill the child, or do I kill the child because I have no way to raise this child and then exact revenge for them killing nearly everyone in my village? Or do I raise the child and take the child with me to go on my path of revenge? And the story involves this excellent swordsman having no skill in raising a child and having the responsibility, i.e. the armored and big, tough, mindless brute in your group should default to the wizard when it comes to solving a problem. I don't know, wizard, what should I do in this situation? I.e. putting the hands and passing it off to the diplomancer, passing it off to the intelligent wizard, passing it off to the sneaky rogue, right? Player characters should not try to cram their square peg into a round hole every time they see something, right? Because there are some players that are like, I have a sword, I know how to hit things, I'm going to hit everything I see, as opposed to I hit things, that's all I know how to do. In this situation, maybe I shouldn't be hitting it. I think we should trust the person that knows how to talk, right? So both a GM should be moving the spotlight around, and as a player, you should understand when the spotlight moves away from you, don't run across the stage and knock the other person out of the spotlight, right? Stay in the background, sing the tunes to be a backup singer, and let that other person shine, at least temporarily, and then pass that stuff around. When the person who talks very well says, hey, I think we're in a sticky situation, I'm gonna need some backup, I'm gonna need a bodyguard when we go to talk to these criminals, and then the big brute standing next to the diplomancer is just like, yeah, go ahead and try something, right? He's gonna talk, I'm gonna stand here, I'm gonna be the mountain, say something out of line, and I'm going to kick your ass, right? So that's a way to support the diplomatic character without the brute stealing the show, but being part of that particular scene. Rickard goes on to say, to that effect, the Fae might require the opposite. They want to see the brute try and diplomats, and the diplomancer try and fight, which is right, which is a great challenge, right? Hey, you're the big brute. We want you to sing a song, right? Wait, what? I don't have performance skill. I don't know. They want to see you sing it, or it could be by accident, right? The big brute thinks that the little small fey creatures are like the little fairy, floating around his head looks really cute. And that might be the opening for the diplomatic character to step in, because no, the big brute didn't try to kill the little, fairy flies. The brute actually thinks they're really beautiful, even though he's not even charmed by them, right? He's just like, oh, these are cute fireflies, I love it. And you're just like, okay, I guess. Rickard says, you're big, you must have a powerful voice. Sing. Exactly, right? Hey, we want to see you sing and dance, and the small little, diplomatic character, right? The face of the group, it's like they throw him a razor sharp sword, and you're like, we want to see your skill. And they're like, what? or we have an annual race and it's through the deep brush and over the fields and stuff, and you should be racing with us. The centaurs that are out in the with the fey creatures are like, hey, in order for you to pass by our area, you have to run with us. And you're like, I can't keep up with the centaurs, but I guess I'll try. And maybe they let you pass, if for no other reason than at least trying, even if you fail or you fall in the mud or something like that over and over. They're just like laughing at you, and they're like, we'll help you up. And they very, very roughly wipe you off as you're like face deep in mud and stuff. And they're like, come with us. I mean, it could be the idea of the challenge, not the challenge itself, or maybe the fake creatures want everyone in the party to entertain them, and each person in the party has to do something to entertain the fake creatures. Like the big brute has to lift up something heavy. The acrobatic character must juggle or do backflips. The bard character, of course, gets to be the hype man and make up poetry or sing a song or play some music that goes along with their little performances. Maybe the wizard is supposed to cast some spells that have like great effects, maybe casting a flame in their hand or using fairy fire or like dancing lights to make little images in the air or something like that. Rickard says the more you fail, the more entertaining you were, and the more you win. That's a great idea too, right? Maybe giving slight little hints that the more they fail, the more they win. So it's better for a character who has the lowest skill to do a certain thing, right? The weakest character in the group, the wizard, tries to push the boulder up the hill and trips and falls backwards, and the boulder rolls over top of him as he gets squished in the mud, and he's just like, oh, that hurts, oh man, and everyone's like laughing and clapping and having fun, laughing at his expense, but it looks good in the eyes of the fake creatures. You know what I mean? The big brute that can't sing at all, can't carry a tune, is starting to sing and run around to everybody, or tries to create poetry that's absolutely positively horrible. And the fake creatures are just like, oh, they're even putting their head down like, I can't believe this person's doing it. And so what a great challenge, right? This is a perfect way to quote unquote challenge your players in their weakest area, but still having fun with it, still giving them a reward for doing it. I think that's a perfect idea to have the players figure out that the weakest member is to do the thing so that they try to fail. I would even adjust the rules so that instead of using inspiration in 5th edition to get advantage, use inspiration to get disadvantage. I would let somebody do that if they figured it out. The thing is, especially with fey creatures and fey realms. Oh, let me add one more thing to this before we leave. Reskinning, renaming, reusing. Not only can you just reskin a creature and just call it a fey creature, right? You could reskin the source of damages, because I brought that up before. So instead of it just having, the ogre hitting something and it's bludgeoning damage, maybe it's electrical damage or fire or psychic or thunder or something. So those effects could happen, as well as other effects in and around the region. And don't be afraid to reskin some spells or some creatures or some monsters and make them traps all their own. So going to the east and trying to escape, let's say quicksand. Quicksand could be, pick a gelatinous cube or a black ooze or a gray ooze or black pudding, to be jelly, puddings, gelatin, oozes, whatever. You could just make them, they don't have to be alive. They could just be things in the area, right? If you fall into it, this is what happens to you. And so therefore that so-called useless shove maneuver could be very useful if you shove someone over into it, right? Into the so-called quicksand, which could be just like a gelatinous cube or something. Rickard says, it also lets the players play out of type, cleansing the palette a bit, even if needed. Yeah, exactly. And who knows? Maybe the big brute character, maybe the PCs are getting a little bored, right? I'm the damage dealer, and all I'm doing is dealing damage. I'm the person that talks to everyone, and all I do is talk to things, right? You could play out of type, and even the failures could lead to some really cool character moments and allow the characters to shine. Because a bad character design is a character that cannot be involved in all parts of the game, right? A dumb brute should be able to be created well, should be able to partake in being diplomatic. Now, they could fail at it, which is perfectly fine, but if they have nothing to say or nothing to add, even if it's only to add the fact that they think somebody else should be involved in it, a good character design should be involved in all three parts of the pillars: combat, social, and environment, even if one or more of them they suck at it, right? So they should be involved in it, and I would encourage it. Also, Deadman, the storyteller, says there's a fluff story in an old Dark Sun supplement about a human being forced to run with a tribe of elves, and it ends with the elves respecting a human for the attempt, even though he failed badly. Exactly. And all things do not, if we use the word experience, like experience points, the word experience means experiencing something. Taken holistically, not necessarily I have to kill it because it is my experience points. Instead, I am experiencing something and I failed at it, and I experience it again and I fail at it for a third and fourth and fifth time. You still learn something from it. You learn humility. You learn not to do that again. You learn that these creatures respect you for it. You learn that, oh, my character's never done this before. Maybe I shouldn't do it again, right? You have experienced something, i.e., that's why people give away experience as milestones, because it's not about defeating the creature. It is experiencing yourself through the eyes of whatever it is, or you as a player experiencing your character's action through their eyes, right? So failing doesn't necessarily mean no experience points. Failing means your experience happened to have failure in it and you learn from it. So maybe later on you go, you know what? I'm going to make my character a little tougher or whatever, because we do have a lot of players that are like, hey, I'm first level. I've already designed the choices I'm going to make till I get to 20th level. But if you don't, you could change that mindset if the players are now challenged in other areas. If the big brute is constantly being challenged for using their intelligence and their charisma, and the player is either having a lot of fun failing in these things because other people get to shine, but then when it's his turn to start dealing out the damage, they feel fine, cool. They can keep adding more abilities and more skills and more options to get that damage dealing. But let's say that player is getting a little frustrated, like, I don't like the fact that I should have never put an 8 in my charisma, and I should have picked some more diplomatic skills, and my intelligence is only 9. You know what? My next level, I think I'm gonna add a point to my intelligence. Or you know what? My next level, I'm gonna add some skills to my charisma, so at least I can have a persuasion of 10, which makes it average, right? You know what I mean? That might get them to start to change things a little bit. And what a great way for the diplomatic character to talk with the big brute during a downtime, sleeping under a tent in the desert. Like, hey, guy, hey, listen. Now, when you approach a lady, here's what you say, and you're like, I kill things. You kill with me. Like, no. Relax. Here, you come up to her. You offer her some flowers. And then you do. You could have the little role playing scene where one character starts teaching the other one. The wizard starts teaching the big brute how to read. The cleric starts to teach the others what their faith is about, and what a great way for characters to grow and learn things. Or even, hey, I want my big brute to pick up a level of bard or wizard or cleric later on. And like, you know what? That really makes a lot of sense in this game. Or even if you don't allow, because multiclassing is an option. I know people fail to realize that, but multiclassing is an optional rule in your game. Instead of using multiclassing, maybe they pick up a feat, where the feat allows them to quote unquote multi-class in a way. Rickard says, nothing makes someone wanting to improve in an area than having been challenged in that area over and over again and failing. Absolutely. And I feel like those are great character building moments. And sure, outside the game, it might not make sense, but within your game, at your table, at that very moment, it might make perfect sense. You know, giving the big brute a feat that allows them to charm, you know, they have great charisma or persuasion or something, is something that love you, baby. Have a good one. I think it's going to be rainy today, but so having that in your game, while on paper someone else might go, that doesn't make any sense. Why would a barbarian pick with an 8 charisma, pick that feat or that ability, or take a level of cleric at 4th level? Like, why would you do that? But in the game, that might make perfect sense. And what a great story that brings as well. You know, when the player fails, and then it's like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to learn. My character's going to pick something that's better. Then yeah, you could do those kind of things. Dead Man the Storyteller says, tomorrow you're probably going to see the results of the big storm running across the states right now. Yeah, it is. I'm right in the middle. We're myself, Dante, some other people I think who are in Central Ohio are in the path of storms that are sweeping across the states. So yep, storms ravaging the states. It's the United States is seen from basically 4 different areas. The East Coast, which is New York, the South, which is usually considered either Florida or Texas, the West, which is California, and the North area, which is like Chicago. And most everyone else ignores the flyover states, the middle of the country. Excuse me, wow. But the middle of the country is where all of our weather pops through, right? So we have tornadoes and hurricanes and blizzards and all that kind of stuff, and heat waves and all of that flows right through the middle of the United States. So yeah, we're more than just 4 big cities. It's everything in the middle, and those of us in the middle get a little potpourri of everything, a little sprinkling, a little seasoning. Yeah, sometimes a little too much salt, a little too much paprika, a little much cayenne pepper, and it just spoils the whole thing. So, but guys, everyone have a great one. Tomorrow is Future Friday. I do have some ideas to talk about, like, how does science fiction and fae creatures and the Feywild, does that really mix together? Well, the first answer is no, but the second answer is, well, yeah. So we're gonna talk about that for Future Friday, and of course, it's going to be coaxed all in and around science fiction and things like that, whether it's rumors and folk tales and alien species and things hidden in the deep web and all that kind of business. So yeah. Yeah, Dead Man says it was a practical hurricane in the middle of CO, Colorado. Yep, absolutely. Future Fae Friday. Thank you, Tesla Ranger. Tesla Ranger with the goggles and the backpack with the electricity going through it. I see you, Tesla. I see ya with your AC DC rods. Don't think you can't get past me. There you go, old steampunkish. I see ya. Yeah, Ricker says, if I can't make it, I'll catch you when daylight savings is synced up again. No problem. Yeah, Future Fae Friday, Triple F. Guys, have a great one. I will see thee tomorrow. Thank you very. Oh, and don't forget, Sunday, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour later than my normal streams, I will be doing yet another 2-hour live page through of the Invisible Sun RPG, the digital format version, the Invisible Sun PDF RPG, not the big black box that's been released. So I will be doing that again, probably either going over the magic system, or most likely character creation and die mechanics. I'll start with how the hell do you do things and how do you create characters. I'm going to need at least a 2-hour period because there's a lot of stuff in there, but join me for that as well. So spread the word on that. Guys, thank you very much. Have a good one. See ya. Bye.